Hello, everyone, and happy First Generation Celebration Day. Welcome to our panel presentation titled First Gen at Penn State and Beyond, a snapshot of how first generation undergraduate students at Penn State can make the most of their college experience and prepare for future transitions to graduate school, the workplace, and more. My name is Denise Pohl, and I'm Director of Student Success Initiatives in Undergraduate Education. I oversee the Student Success Center, which provides community information, advocacy, and student support services for undergraduate students at Penn State. Tonight's event is co-sponsored by First Gen Advocates. FGA is a student-run organization at the University Park campus that supports and mentors undergraduate first-generation students. FGA holds personal and professional development workshops, social and de-stress events to help first-gen students thrive at Penn State. FGA strives to be the voice of first-generation students in the student community at Penn State, and their purpose is to promote awareness, advocacy, and mentorship to further support first-gen college students at Penn State. Every November 8th, Penn State joins colleges and universities from across the nation in recognizing National First Generation College Celebration Day. Established by the Council for Opportunity and Education and the Center for First Generation Student Success, the November 8th holiday marks the anniversary of the signing of the Higher Education Act of 1965, which created a range of initiatives to expand access in higher education for low-income and first-generation students. Each year, there are thousands of students that graduate Penn State, and there are nearly 16,000 students enrolled each year across the entire university. That actually makes up 25% of Penn State's undergraduate student population. Today, we celebrate these students and their community, the communities that support them in their collegiate journey. Now, it's a huge honor to introduce our moderator for our panel, Troy Turner. Troy, I will turn it over to you to tell our participants a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this evening's panel discussion as a part of our First Generation Celebration Day. My name is Troy Turner, and I'm currently a fourth-year student in the College of Liberal Arts studying labor and human resources with a minor in sociology. And I am also a proud first-generation student. And from my experience, I just really value being able to create the own blueprint for my college journey and not being able to mimic anybody else's or just being told I should do this. I'm creating everything genuine and pure. So it's really been a great experience so far. But a little bit about today's panel discussion. First Gen at Penn State and Beyond features Penn State faculty, staff, alumni, and industry recruiters. And they will provide insight into how first generation students can make the most out of their college experience and prepare for their future transitions to grad school, to workplace, and so much more. And a few reminders before we get into tonight's event. This is a recorded event where the recording will be made available to you all afterwards. And during the panel, questions will be directed to specific panelists, but panelists are welcome to share any additional comments or just experiences they have as a whole. And we will do our best to keep track of time. And attendees, if you have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A feature in our Zoom chat. And anybody in person, thank you for joining us and just jotting down any questions throughout the session and sharing with your on-site host. And I'm really honored to be able to moderate this panel and just be able to hear everybody's unique experiences. And before we start our discussion tonight, I would like to invite each of our panelists to just quickly introduce themselves. And panelists, I'll call on each one of you and you give your name, professional title, graduation year, if you attended Penn State, and your connection with the first gen community. That would be awesome. And Jarl, we'll start with you.
Thanks, Troy. I'm Jarl Ahlkvist. I teach sociology at University Park. I was the advisor before Denise for the First Gen Advocates student organization here on campus. I've also wrote the curriculum for academic advising, the training to help folks work with first gen students. And I also do some research on currently the pathways that first gen students take through our 20 campus university system, and as also some work on how first gen students cope with stress during college.
Thank you for being here, Jarl. And Noel, I have you next.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Noel Claudio. I'm a first generation alumni from Penn State College of IST, raised in Philadelphia, from Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic. And my career has been focused around consulting and strategy and operations to date.
Pleasure to meet you, Noel. And Christa, I have you up next.
Thanks, Troy. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for the opportunity to be here. My name is Christa Hasenkopf. I'm the Director of Air Quality Programs at the Energy Policy Institute at the University of Chicago, and I'm a trustee at Penn State. I graduated from Penn State in 2003 from the Eberly College of Science and Schreier Honors College at University Park. Growing up, I experienced homelessness and poverty, and I'm a first-generation college student and have gone on to do a lot of work around open data and open source information to help people find opportunities, and really excited to be here.
We're glad to have you. And Jenn, you're next.
Jennifer Stubbs. I'm the Assistant Director of Recruiting and Employer Engagement for Penn State Career Services, which means that I get to help employers as they navigate recruiting at the university. I was a first generation student myself. I graduated with an undergrad in psychology and a master's degree in education. I'm currently in process of my doctoral degree in higher ed, but I really am passionate about this community, and I'm honored to be able to work with Denise and her team as we really prop up what does it mean for us to be supporting first gen students at the university to make sure that we can empower them to find success in whatever path is right for them. So thanks again, and Troy, thanks for having me.
Awesome. And last but not least, Jessica.
Hello, everyone. Super excited to be here. My name is Jessica. I am a university recruiter with Amazon. I graduated with a bachelor's degree in business administration in 2017, but I am not, unfortunately, a Penn State alum, but I have had the opportunity to work with the First Gen Advocates group quite a bit this semester, and really look forward to continuing that partnership and working with you all at Penn State.
Awesome. Thank you for being here, Jessica. And diving into our first theme of questions, we have just the idea of being first generation and what does this entail, because it can look different for many. And Jarl, with having some of your research centered around first generation students, can you start off by clarifying the definition for us of what a first generation student is and why this population is important to you?
Sure, Troy. And thanks for Denise for having me also. And it was really nice to meet you all the other day. And I look forward to hearing what everyone has to share today. So typically, I think the definition that most universities and colleges and researchers have been using is that a first gen student is defined by not having a parent or guardian that has a 4-year bachelor's degree. Research and changes probably in the last 15 or so years has really come to sort of embrace and recognize the diversity of folks that are covered by that pretty broad definition. And so, for example, there's more recognition on the research side, especially that we need to understand the variety of first gen students. So research is sort of moving towards more specific definitions or to drilling down a little bit. So we could look, for example, at distinguishing students whose parents have attended college but didn't graduate, and we can compare those to folks who have parents who graduated with 4-year degrees. Or we could look at students who have perhaps 1 versus 2 parents that have degrees, or even look at students who are truly first in their immediate family to go to college, as opposed to those who might have siblings that have already graduated from college. So that's one set of kind of diversifying and I think getting a bit more nuanced look at what really is hiding behind that broad definition. The other area is the recognition and the increasing attention and to the way that first gen student as an identity, as a status, as an experience and background intersects with other dimensions of identity and difference and inequity, family income, race and ethnicity, gender, and so on. And I think Troy asked about sort of what's my personal investment here, what's my personal interest in first gen students. And I'm just going to try to quickly answer that. Sort of on a personal level, I can relate to first gen students of this generation because neither of my parents earned 4-year degrees either. One of the things I relate to obviously is the same kinds of challenges that I had as an undergrad and that I've continued to have through grad school and as a college professor. That first generation experience is something that I carry with me, I guess. And usually these days, I think for better than worse. So one of the things that I appreciate about and enjoy and sort of value in first gen students is their resilience, their ability to, yes, there are challenges, but it's an inventive population when it comes to figuring out how to address those challenges. As a college professor, my job professionally, first gen students are kind of essential to having class alongside other students that have different perspectives and sort of come from, I guess, less traditional pathways to get to Penn State. And so I find that their experiences, their perspectives, they're often unrecognized or sometimes underappreciated, kind of these hidden talents that first gen students have developed because of that. Their experiences is something that really I think is important for me as a professor and as part of the campus community. It brings something really unique and very useful to the classroom. And finally, as a citizen, I think educational and professional opportunities for first gen students are at this point in our history vital, because I believe, I think I have good reason to believe that these are the kinds of students, the kinds of graduates that we desperately need an infusion of into our institutions, private and public, in some cases to maybe even save those institutions. There are a lot of ways in which first-gen students have unique perspectives and skills that they can contribute to a university or corporation or the government. So those are some of my sort of why I gravitated to working with and on first gen issues. Thanks.
That's awesome. Yeah, I definitely value your research just in terms of like the diversity that comes in first generation students, because like in this webinar we're all first gen and everybody has a completely different experience. So I feel like that's really the beauty in it. Next, starting off with you, Christa. How did you come to learn that you were a first generation student, and then Noel to follow?
Yeah, so I don't think I'd heard first generation college student, that term, when I was in school. I don't think it existed, or at least it wasn't very popular. I think I first heard the term when I started mentoring students at Penn State a few years back. And it was a little bit of a revelation for me when I was in school. I had thought of my experiences and sort of like both my background and sort of the difficulties that some of the obstacles that come up being a first generation student. I thought they were quite unique to me. And I realize now they were not at all, but I didn't have this vocabulary or this part of my identity or this really community that falls out of that when you have the vocabulary to express that identity. So I feel like that was something I see now, so that is so valuable, is having this identity of being a first generation student that like lets you have these conversations to realize that your experiences, there's threads that connect with other people that you can learn from and take advantage of and figure out like where there's gaps for you as a first generation student that other people can help you fill. So I didn't realize it until I was quite a bit out of college, but I'm really glad the term exists now and that it lets this community form around it.
Awesome. And Noel?
Yeah, I echo that as well, where I graduated from IST in 2014. And for me, I don't think I knew what that term was even throughout my 4 years of college. I think there are elements of being a first generation student and alumni where I felt that in early childhood, through high school, all the way through college, when constantly I would be surrounded by people whose families had gone to college, had a lot of connections in corporate America and things like that, where I always was rushing to tell my parents, like, hey, I'm the first to do this and to do that. I'm the first to get accepted to college, the first to graduate, the first to go in the consulting industry, the first to make it to tech, the first to go to Silicon Valley. Like, there's a long list of first for me. So I'm glad that there was a term, right? And to kind of bring more hope to so many of us, and especially in the underrepresented community, where we don't even know that we're first generation until we're placed in college and we see diversity and the numbers, and we realize that, this is a brand new experience that no one has ever gone through, especially if you come from other countries, even outside of the United States. So I'm also very glad that this exists, and I'm just looking forward to continue to be an advocate in any single way that I can. And it's something that is, I'm proud to be first gen, right? It's a lifelong thing for me to help others as well, because there's certainly a lot of challenges that we have to deal with. And it, by the way, it does not just start and end in college. It continues throughout your entire life in the workforce, and so much more. So it's something that I wear proudly.
Definitely. I definitely resonate with that. Just like being able to discover your identity, it's really relieving, and you're able to like truly hit the ground running and like discover your purpose, I feel as though. So then going into the next question, Jenn, how does the identity of being a first generation student impact the college experience as a whole? And then Jessica to follow.
Sure, it's an important question. So when I think about the identity of a first generation student, I think back to my own experience. Jarl, I heard you talk about that term resilience, and I heard that echoed in Christa's response as well, right? But for me, I didn't really know the term first gen. It wasn't something that was socialized when I was in undergrad. But again, looking back, that was my story. I didn't know what I was doing, right? I was kind of making it up as I went. And now in hindsight, I realized that there was something that I was trying to navigate. There's this idea of a hidden curriculum, of there's information that some students have access to or know about that some don't. And I was one of those students that was on the outside, that I didn't really know how I fit in, even though I had a good social network and I was involved and I was doing all the things that I thought I should have done. I still kind of felt this imposter syndrome of like, do I belong here? And so now as a staff member who teaches a couple of classes in SMEAL and in liberal arts, that's something I really try to impart on students, that there are people who are there to be your champion, that want to help you navigate that hidden curriculum, want to help you figure out how can you invest in yourself so that you can take advantage of opportunities as they persist. But absolutely, there's something that's part of the identity of being a first gen student that is a superpower. You just need to learn how to harness it and be able to articulate it when that time comes. Jessica, I'm curious to hear your thoughts to that as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jenn. I totally understand what you're talking about, and, was thinking about the imposter syndrome as well. Like even as a first generation student, and Noel, you were talking about how it continues on throughout your entire career. Like I still feel like an imposter, like right now, right? Am I truly supposed to be here? So it continues, but you got to push through that. I think that the identity of being a first generation student impacts the college experience in so many more ways than that too. Like even before you're going to college, like for myself, first generation students tend to think about going to college much later in the process than, their peers who had parents that are pushing them to take the SAT or the ACT and to do all of the things that they need to do. And so just even before getting into college, you feel a little bit or I felt a little bit more ill prepared, right? Did I apply early enough? I missed some deadlines. I didn't take this test in time. Academically, financially, psychologically, didn't feel as prepared. And then on top of that, being on campus, kind of feeling that imposter syndrome, and not really knowing where those resources are for us. How can I find a network, because I don't have one, to get internships and to, find a position outside of college when I do graduate, and navigating all the complex financial structures as well that are necessary to get the support financially that you need. And another thing is, for first generation college students, it's impactful because, taking an internship, which is something that, you're supposed to do when you're in college, sometimes it costs more than you can afford, right? If you are currently working and you're working maybe not full time, but as much as you can, and an internship maybe unpaid or not pay as well as what you're doing currently, it can be costly to do that. And so it kind of affects that, ability to take those and to advance during that time. But it is important to persist. And I know for myself, I was able to kind of balance getting those internships as well as working. And it definitely is hard and impacts that college experience for sure. But I think that I wear that first generation identity as a badge, not only in college, but after graduation as well.
Yeah, as you should, Jessica. And I'm glad you both touched on imposter syndrome, because it's like, I'm sure that's something we all can resonate with, like this feeling as though we don't belong or we're not qualified in certain spaces. But if you have a seat at that table, be an advocate for yourself, find your network, and just make the most out of it. And as many of us are still going through their college journey, the next theme focuses on just like maximizing your college experience and just making the most out of being first generation on such a huge campus. And starting off with you, Jenn, and Noel, if you would like to follow, what advice would you give to current students on how to maximize their Penn State experience as first gen students?
I think what the challenge with Penn State is that we are so big. There's endless opportunities, but how do you find the opportunities that are right for you? One of the things that I talked a little bit about, that idea of a hidden curriculum. I think you need to think about, what can I do today? What can I do this week or this month that's going to help to invest in myself? So looking at all of those opportunities that you have available to you and really starting to set some strategic goals. And if you need help setting those goals, you have more people who are here to champion you than you could ever realize. And so I would encourage you to learn how to network early and often, practice that skill. When I talk with employers, one of the reasons that they want to hire Penn State students is because of the academics, but it's also because of the problem solving skills, the communication skills, the team building skills. Look, I'm seeing Jessica nod, right? Those are skills that you can really refine when you're a Penn State student if you make that concerted effort. And so that idea of building your network of people who are going to lift you up when you are having rougher days, whether it's a peer network or faculty member or a staff member that you connect with, find your people, right? Because that's going to be insulating during those harder times. And before I turn it over to Noel, I would be remiss if I didn't say, visit career services, come to see us early and often, because it's so much easier to have the conversation when a student is earlier in their academic career. And we can talk about building those strategic goals so that when it is time to graduate, you have the opportunities that you want. It's a totally different conversation when we meet with you the very first time as you're getting ready to graduate. Now we're only looking at the opportunities that you happen to be qualified for, right? So when I talk about investing in yourself, I would say, build that network, tap your resources, and have that confidence to know that you're doing really great things, and the world's going to open up for you. Noel, toss it over to you.
Thank you. I echo that as well. Career services really helped me when I was a student. and it opened the door to so many opportunities. So I highly recommend that. Yeah, I mean, my advice is to do what got you here to begin with, and that's the hustle. That's to continue breaking barriers. Every single moment in your life has been a challenge. I know it. I was there, and I'm sure that it's not easy. It's not easy when you are walking through the halls and you're going through the first time, not able to have your parents or family or friends even understand what you're studying, right, or what you are trying to do or trying to become. So the good thing about Penn State as a whole, and that I've learned as an alumni and even when I was a student, is that the network is very big. So believe it or not, whether you're a freshman or a sophomore, you might think, oh, like, I've got plenty of time. The time goes by very fast. And the friends that you make in your 4 years and such in college, right, become like your connections for life. And even for me, so many years removed now, I think it's 8. I'm losing track of count. I guess I'm getting old. For me, it's now my network is people that I still remember from the days I was back at Penn State. I also would advise everyone to join organizations, join clubs, things that interest you. It could be fun. It could be related to academics. But again, expose yourself to as many people as possible, and also don't be afraid to stand up for yourself too, and advocate and bring that mentality that got you there in the first place. Sometimes people may not agree with you. They may not agree with your opinions. They may not be in your shoes or know what it feels like to be first generation. So you have to also politely educate people, right? Like understand that not everyone comes from your perspective. You don't come from their perspectives. So how can you come together, right, and educate one another to make your experiences at Penn State even better for a lifelong? So, and find mentors. Last thing, right? Like get a mentor. It could be me, right? It could be any one of us on this call. Like reach out to other Penn Staters if you want to chat, right? Whether it's career opportunity, whether it's just advice on how to navigate Penn State as a student. We're very open to talking, and there's so many amazing people out there. So that's my advice.
Yeah, I definitely have to echo Noel. This has been the fastest 4 years of my life. So it is so important that we take advantage of everything on campus, whether it's career services, the Multicultural Resource Center. There's so much for us out here. So we really do need to find our community. And Jarl, oftentimes first generation students don't take advantage of engagement opportunities like research fellowships or study abroad. I'm actually guilty of this one myself because they do not feel accessible. So what is your advice to students who feel this way? And Christa, do you have anything to follow with?
Yeah, I think everyone has sort of said this so much better than I possibly can, but I actually have a little script to keep myself from going over time here. So I'm gonna read this, and this is very much what Noel said just now about this idea that you have to inform or educate other folks about what being a first gen student is like. That's something that other students, many of your peers, don't have to do, and so that's just part of the deal. There's a real upside to having to sort of being in that position where you have to sort of share that and explain to folks where you're coming from and what your experiences are. So I'm gonna quickly read some of what I jotted down here, but this is very much echoing what Jennifer and Jessica just said as well. So you'll probably hear some echoes of what they put much more succinctly. But so setting aside the issue of time and money, which was mentioned obviously for things like study abroad, and even taking the time to join a student organization or to do an internship, or on top of maybe working while you're a student, and family obligations and so on, and setting that aside, recognizing that is an important issue. One of the things that I've sort of found, and I think others who've I've sort of talked to about this on our campus and at Penn State more widely, and also the research kind of bears this out as well, that there are these barriers to taking advantage of these kinds of enrichment or engagement opportunities that are pretty common among first-gen students. And part of it has to do with what was mentioned, this feeling of being out of place or feeling like an imposter. And that's not surprising, given that first-gen college students, pre-college backgrounds and experiences usually are pretty different from those of their what we call continuing generation students, those who do have a parent with at least one parent with a 4-year bachelor's degree. And so, as Jessica was describing there, this sort of preparation, this college track early on, sort of this assumption that you're going to college and we're going to start preparing you early in the process, doing all the right things that you need to do to line up your applications, and also knowing then when you get to campus, kind of what to expect. This is kind of sense that this is not that different from your experience back home in your community or with your family. This is sort of the not a real cultural change. It's consistent. It's continuing what you've already done prior to college. And so one aspect of those pre-college experiences for non-first gen students is often this information that was also alluded to, right? You have this understanding of the hidden curriculum already going in as soon as you show up on your first day of your first semester at Penn State, that many first-gen students are behind on putting that information together, having those networks, having that knowledge base. There's also, I think, a sense that if you've been kind of on this college track and you've had parents and family and other folks who've kind of been, preparing you for what college is going to be like and supporting you along the way and providing that kind of scaffolding that, based on their experiences and their expertise, many students come to college with a set of expectations and understandings of how things work. And when it comes to these engagement opportunities, doing a research assistantship, for example, or doing study abroad, the assumption is that, of course, I'm going to do those things, right? I expect the university to offer me those opportunities, and I see that as part of my overall educational or college experience. First-gen students, a little different situation often, the sense then that they're often less clear about why those things matter or why they should take time or spend money or spend somebody's money on doing those things. And so the socialization, the pre-college experiences are really different. And so my advice, two pieces of advice very quickly. One has already been mentioned. There's this idea of obviously seek out co-conspirators, right? In the folks who work for the university, right? So faculty, advisors, staff, folks that can help you not only navigate the curriculum in your major and your minor and so on, but also as you head towards thinking about career options or graduate school or law school or where you're headed next. The second piece, I think, is it's really important, regardless of which groups or organizations you seek out, particularly among your peers, is to find opportunities where there's an opportunity for cultural exchange, where there are those opportunities that Noel mentioned about being able to kind of share your own first-gen experience and give people an understanding of that context, but also to learn from other people's experience, because that kind of exchange will help you, regardless of what the purpose of the club or the group or the organization is. If it's that kind of environment, you can learn some of the information you're going to need, some of the shortcuts, some of the hidden information that is required to navigate college, that hidden curriculum. The other thing that it does is it exposes students, particularly first-gen students, to a much bigger set of possibilities. Hearing about what other students did before college, or how they prepared for college, or what kinds of things that motivate them now that they're in college. So I think opening up the world is an important part for a lot of first-gen students as well, because often in combination with those other factors we talked about before, like being low income or being a minoritized ethnically or a racial group member, or some other kind of disadvantaged or unrepresented member of an underrepresented population. Those tend to make people live in smaller worlds and have fewer sort of experiences, and that hopefully is part of it, what you can get by exposing yourself to peers who have had those experiences and can kind of guide you towards them as well.
I couldn't echo enough everything I've heard, especially around so many of the issues we've been talking about when it comes to finding opportunities, and say specifically say research and study abroad. And so I think this will sound similar to what you've heard from Jarl and others, but three things that have come to my mind that I actually often tell myself when I'm looking for opportunities that I think are a bit of a reach for me, which I think happens, again, not just when you're in college, it'll happen afterwards at every step of the way. Three things. So the first one is, and you've heard this already, like networking and finding people, but really it's about finding examples, find as many examples as you can of people doing cool stuff, and then talk to them. And I think a superpower, it took me a while to realize, is that you can write an email to anyone. They might not answer, but you can write that email and you're going to get some answers eventually from some folks. And you can ask for, a 20, 30-minute conversation with someone you think would, like a CEO of a company, or just someone doing something cool. And that is a superpower you have. And I can't emphasize enough, like, explore it. It's amazing. The second thing is that, we've been talking a lot about imposter syndrome. I've felt that, again, at every single stage currently, probably since birth. And the way that I've gotten around it is, like, honestly, that inner voice, when it comes to, like, pursuing that next thing, I don't get rid of it. It's still there. I just keep going, even though it's uncomfortable. I keep thinking, like, all right, that voice is going to be there. I can't seem to figure out how to shut it up. I'm going to keep going. And that means, like, there will be situations where I feel stupid because I didn't know how to do a thing because it's the first time. And I just have to deal with it, and it's okay. An example, doing research as an undergrad, I'd only had jobs up to that point, working at restaurants, being a telemarketer for a summer, which was very painful. Not jobs where I could, like, control my own schedule. So I remember I thought I had to ask the postdoc I was working for if I could take a bathroom break when I was doing research. That's not something you do. I still cringe about that. Oh, well, I learned and kept going. And that has been a very helpful attitude of being okay with feeling stupid sometimes. And I think it's a bit of a superpower if you can master it. And then the third thing I would say is, a lot of times when you're pursuing exciting opportunities, if you find exciting opportunities that you want to do, you're going to hear no, you're going to be rejected. It's not going to go the way that you want. You're not going to get the feedback you want. Being okay. And then if it's something you're excited enough about, like, to keep finding that opportunity. Like, so an example really quickly, when I was a grad student, just about to graduate with my PhD, I wanted to go abroad and do a research project in Mongolia. The capital city is extremely polluted, but for some reason there hadn't been very much research to date in one of the most polluted places in the world. There wasn't much research money. I didn't have a network there. I didn't have equipment. My advisor thought this was probably not the best decision career-wise to take. But I felt pretty strongly about it, and I thought it was a good thing. That's something I was interested in doing. And so, I talked to folks in the department who are willing to see if they could give me used equipment. I applied to several different pots of money, most of which I did not get. But I got enough money and I got enough equipment, and I made the contacts I needed to make, and eventually found that route. And so it's all to say, there's so many opportunities out there if you're willing to put yourself out there, whether it's talking to people to find a good path that works for you, a good example that works for you. If you just need to squash that inner voice sometimes, just, like, let them talk, but you keep doing you. or you accept that someone told you no, and then you go right up to the next person and ask them. So that's what I tell myself anyway, and what's been helpful over time in finding the right resources and opportunities for me.
Yeah, so important to go out and seek those opportunities, because on such a big campus, it's very rare something's going to come knocking at your door like that. But transitioning into one of my favorite themes of the night, we have first generation after college, because with me being first generation, I am a little curious to see what life looks like after college, whether it's in corporate America, just these different large industries, different from my family. So Jessica, I was curious as to whether you have, or what are the unique challenges that first generation students face in the workplace that their peers may not? And Noel, if you have anything to follow with.
Absolutely. I think that this is a great question. Not only do we still experience that imposter syndrome throughout, but I think just even before you meet that workplace, right, when you're trying to find a job outside of college, in my personal experience, it was actually a lot harder than I thought it would be. I thought, you graduate college and then you get a job and it's easy. But I actually didn't find a job until about 3 months after college, and I was still working in the service industry. And so it was almost like a sense of guilt that I felt that, okay, maybe my parents were right. Maybe I didn't need to pursue education to get a job. Maybe I should have gone a different route. And then when I did find that role afterwards, and I knew that I was making, more than my parents were, and they had 40 plus years of experience, I felt even more guilt, right? And this sense of needing to help my family and needing to support them now, and kind of be able to be their caretakers in a sense. And I know that that's true for a lot of first generation college students. And then, in the workplace in general, we experience a lack of mentorship, right? Whereas parents are usually like, oh, I've been through these experiences, able to walk through them and just be mentors, or family friends that may be mentors. You might not have that same level of support. And so it's a unique challenge that you do face. And so it's on us to be able to seek that out, as many have explained before. Noel, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I'll add that I think after college, there's a lot of pressure on you as a first generation. Pressure to succeed. There's also a lot of pressures that are both internal and external. Like my family, once I got my first job right out of college, and I've worked now for 3 different companies, Deloitte Consulting, Slalom, and Twitter. And in each phase, as I've grown older, like my family, like for some reason, thinks I'm rich. They think I'm like, I have everything, that I know everything, which is far from the truth and reality. I'm like, I'm basically to my like little cousins like some hero. It's a lot of pressure that's put on you once you leave college, and especially if you're able to land on your feet, get that amazing job, and continue growing in your career. But then once you're in, you also face a lot of challenges. For example, you don't have resources or mentors in place that someone might have, because they might have an uncle who's worked at X company. You're coming in and maybe you don't even know the career ladder, because if I take my example being in tech, no one's ever been in tech in my family, right? So like, how am I supposed to ask any one of my family members or friends, like, hey, so how do I go from an analyst to a manager, like in 5 years? Like, what do I need to do? What do I need to get done? And then when you kind of put that in place and you look at people within your companies, we still have a lot of work to do from a diversity and inclusion perspective. So I'm facing a lot of challenges myself, where people don't look like me, people don't talk like me, people aren't from the hood in Philadelphia and areas where I've been and what I've seen and gone through. So it is always a revolving challenge. But the one thing is that it's also beautiful at the same time, because you just make your impact, you make your mark, you have that mentality that you've gone through any situation and you will always come out on top. And that's something that a lot of people don't have. And that's what makes being first generation really unique.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for sharing that, Noel. And Denise, will we be transitioning into the Q&A, or should I?
This was a great conversation. I felt a little bit like a lurker hanging out over here, but I was just so engaged with all of these amazing responses. So thank you all. I don't see any questions yet in our Q&A. I don't know if there's anything else that we wanted to maybe to ask or elaborate on, but I'll wait and see if any additional questions come in. And if not, I do have a few questions for you all. So is there anything else that was sort of touched upon that we wanted to talk a little bit further about? I mean, some great little nuggets of advice. Oh, Jessica.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on this. There was a question that we didn't get to cover yet, and the question was, what makes first generation students so appealing to industry recruiters? And I know that Jenn did talk a little bit about this, but I just wanted to state from a recruiting perspective and as a first generation, I do understand that first generation students have already overcome multiple social, economic, and academic barriers to even get into college. And I know that throughout that college, those skills are only multiplying, and your ability to deal with ambiguity, not only throughout that journey of college and finding mentors and finding life after college, but these skills are so valuable. And so I think more and more companies are starting to realize that and are starting to seek out this population of students. So you might have seen companies like Amazon reaching out more to collaborate and to also be a resource, right? Hosting resume building workshops or, ACE your interview sessions and things like that to be able to kind of give back and help where we can as well.
Great. Thank you, Jessica. I was kind of going through my notes because I knew there was something recruiting related. It's like, I feel like there was one other question. So thank you very much for highlighting that. I appreciate it. Yeah, I know that's a big question with our work with first gen advocates, who are just everybody wave to all the people there at the in-person viewing party that First Gen Advocates is hosting. But we've really been focusing with that org of trying to make connections, like with the connection that you all were able to make with that organization, but connecting them with individuals both here, Career Services, Jenn and her colleagues, and then externally, so that we can really kind of get our first generation student population connected to build their skills and get them thinking about, as Jenn mentioned, career and career development earlier on in the process, and how all of the opportunities throughout their collegiate journey really kind of are building blocks to creating that pathway for the transition into career and beyond, or for preparation for graduate school as well. So Troy, you're getting close to graduation. I guess I actually would like to turn the tables a little bit here, and when I have a moment, ask a question of you. What have you found to be most impactful in your journey here at Penn State, studying here? You're finishing up at University Park here, and very soon. What have you found to be some of the support services and resources that you've valued the most in your journey?
Yeah, so for me, coming in, like being first generation, it's just like, it seemed like a requirement. Like my family told me, you're going to college, you have no choice type of thing. And I'm like, I understand. I understand that one. So I just, like, my first 2 years really been reflecting on, why am I here? Am I just trying to get a piece of paper or something like that? But from my experience, I feel like it's really about your like networking, the experience you take away, like everybody mentioned, going to seek out these resources and just making the most out of your experience and discovering who you are, who your identity is. So I feel like I mentioned it earlier, the Multicultural Resource Center, MRC, here on campus in the Grange building has been like such a huge resource for me to like gain aspects of diversity, equity, and inclusion here on campus, just be surrounded by like-minded individuals, discover so much different academic spaces, career paths, and stuff like that. So just being able to take up space as a first generation college student, like knowing I have a seat at this table, I'm gonna eat all the food I can until I'm full type of thing, has really been an important takeaway for me, just to like soak it all in and make the most out of it. So I'm glad to be here with you all and see you all flourishing as first gen college grads. So it makes me know the future is bright.
Thanks, Troy. Well, we're excited for you. It's always a good feeling when you know that the end of the journey is getting a little closer, right? It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
All right, so we do have a few questions that came in. This is an open question, so whoever wants to take it can just either raise their hand or their virtual hand. What advice would you give to a first-gen student who is about to graduate? Jenn.
Well, I want to address this question, but I also want to reflect back on what we were saying at the beginning of the session about the idea of the imposter syndrome. So the reality is about 7% of the world's population has an undergrad degree, right? When we're in college, it feels like we're surrounded by people and this is the thing that everyone is doing, but it really is a unique place of privilege. And so I want to commend everyone for walking this path and know that you're not alone and you're not the first one going through it, right? You have an army of people who are here to be beside you. And to answer that question of some advice as you're launching a career, we know that the greatest indicator for your future career is exposure to those opportunities. And so something that Christa had said, that the world is getting really flat. You can email almost anyone, right? You can find people on LinkedIn, you can reach out to individuals. I would say have as many conversations as you possibly can with people. Ask them to understand what was their secret for success as they launched a career. It's a really powerful way to learn about positions that you might not have known about and to start to build your network one by one. But I'm certainly so excited to be a part of this conversation and to hear some of the success stories that we'll get as a result of this. So before we sign off, I just want to make sure, Denise, I just want to say thanks to you and your team for helping to foster this conversation. It's so meaningful and so impactful.
Thanks, Jenn. Absolutely. Well, we have a few. Let's do one more question at least, and we can probably go if you are all who can hang on here. We'll go, since we started a little late due to tech difficulties, we'll maybe go just a little bit late to round out the hour. So a question for Noel. What advice would you give a first gen working in tech, specifically Big Four, especially it being rare in your family?
That's a great question. Consulting, or just the Big Four in general, McKinsey, BCG as well, all of that professional services industry as it relates to tech is a very rewarding but also challenging field at the same time. And my advice is, like, one, if you get an opportunity and you have an opportunity, I would highly recommend to take that, because I am not where I am today, or even the person I am, without the 5.5 years experiences that I had at Deloitte Consulting when I first left Penn State, just because of the challenges of working with so many different clients, so many different projects, from tech implementation work to project management, strategy, business process improvements, traveling all over the world basically as well. Like I went to so many different locations, which also made me become better just as a professional and as a person, and also having to get in front of people, right? So we talk about networking, and one of the things in the Big Four as a professional services firm overall is you're constantly dealing with so many different types of people from all departments, all areas, and solving some very difficult challenges. So it forces you to mature, it forces you to think differently, to think logically, to be better at analysis. So that is the tricky part. But in terms of just like it being rare in your family, it's going to be rare. It's something that is so unique because it just exposes you to so many different opportunities at a very, very young age. And it'll now, to date, like the reason I'm able to network and talk to so many people out there is I keep my LinkedIn up to date. I add a lot of people. I share my story as a first gen. But people reach out to me too because of my prior experience in the Big Four. So it's not the only thing. I will say, if you have any and every opportunity is a golden window to be great, right? And to learn. So don't just hold high hopes either just for the Big Four. Is my other thought, but if you get in, it's definitely a rewarding experience.
Thank you, Noel. All right, actually last question, and then I'll hand it back to Troy to wrap us up. What advice would you give to seniors who are debating taking a gap year, as it is often looked down upon? We'll go with you, Christa, and then to Jessica.
Yeah, I don't think there's one cookie cutter answer, but I can share, at least from my own experience, that I took 2 years off between undergrad and pursuing my PhD. I taught high school for 2 years. And And when I was applying to do that, I was discouraged by one of my professors. They said if I did that, I was going to forget all the math that I knew, and I was probably not going to go on to grad school. My thought at the time was if I did not want to go on to grad school after that 2-year period, maybe that wasn't for me. So my thought is like, keep your eye on the prize. And the prize is a career that's rewarding and that you like, not necessarily another degree or a particular, accolade. So that at least worked for me and has made me happy. I think your mileage may vary. I tend to find that most folks who do take that gap year are not looked down upon. I think there's a fear of it, but I've yet to see that actually be a real ding against someone, at least in my fields and where I've operated in nonprofit, government, and academia.
And just to echo that, from a recruiting standpoint, you would, if you're looking to start your career after, instead of going to grad school, it's not looked down upon either. That time is for you, right? If you have the resources to take that, that's amazing and that's incredible. And it gives you more time to decide what you want to do and to, I guess, be able to be a little bit more picky. I think, the first generation population in general tends to, seek opportunities for employment faster and accept faster because, economically we're worried about not getting another opportunity or not getting another, another opportunity essentially. And so if you have the resources to do that, I think that that's actually incredible. So don't be scared of it.
All right, thank you both for those responses. All right, well, I hate to wrap this up because I feel like we could have a lot more to talk about, but we have to close out this evening. I will hand it over to Troy to do just that.
Yeah, thank you, Denise. And a little off script, but I wanted to say thank you to the Student Success Center for just giving me the privilege of moderating this panel. I was honored to be on the panel last year and share my experience. So just being able to hear all of y'all experiences and just hear how we can relate and just how we're different as first gen is very beautiful to me. And we wanted to thank everyone in attendance for this wonderful panel discussion this evening, and especially a big shout out, thank you to our panelists for their participation and insight. Penn State has a wide variety of resources, support services, and communities that aim to support first generation success. Finding the right resources for your needs is very important. While our conversations tonight just scratched the surface on the needs and opportunities for first generation students, it's important to find your community and take the step you need to ask for support. Offices like the Student Success Center, Multicultural Resource Center, which I mentioned earlier, Paul Robeson Cultural Center, so much stuff on this huge campus are there to help you all, so please take advantage of it. If you would like to find additional support to make the most out of your experience and be prepared for life after Penn State, please reach out and connect with these resources. Noel mentioned LinkedIn earlier. I'm sure everybody's on LinkedIn. Do a little bit of research and I'm sure we'll all be connected with you. And that concludes the virtual panel portion of tonight's event. If you are watching from an in-person viewing party, we will now turn things over to your on-site host for next steps. For those viewing online, thank you again. And it was my first time doing that.
All right, take care, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.